I'm not sure if I'm keen on the future, but I'm going to try to be. I'm from the future. I'm from Northern California, from San Francisco, where we don't obey rules, but I'll try and keep to my 20 minutes. Although futurists, of course, always break rules. So if you really want to be a good futurist, smash things up. Move fast and break things, as Mark Zuckerberg says, or said, now he himself has been broken. For better or worse. The future's a funny thing. Obviously, I always make this joke, and since we're in Bulgaria, I can make it. The future is like the Brazilian economy. It's always on the horizon. It's full of potential. At least I didn't make that joke about the Bulgarian economy, right? I don't know what the equivalence is between Bulgaria and Brazil, but full of potential. The future, of course, is something that we can't see, we can't feel, we sense it. And of course, as builders of the future in Northern California, in Silicon Valley, where I'm from, we're in the business of marketing, of shaping, of selling, and of building the future. I don't think we've done a very good job, really, over the last few years. I've been an entrepreneur and a writer, both a builder of the future and a critic of the idea of the future. Back in the 1990s, I had a startup called Audio Cafe, so I can see all this stuff from lots of different perspectives. The future has been reinvented this year in Silicon Valley. The future now is AI. The future is generative AI. It's ChatGPT 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Supported, of course, by Microsoft Azure, who are also sponsoring this show. The future is Google Bard. The future is a post, and the lady who gave the introduction, a post-Turing test world. Turing test was premised on the idea that we struggle between distinguishing machine intelligence and human intelligence. But it would still be hard to replicate the machine with ChatGPT, with generative AI, with what OpenAI, Sam Altman, Microsoft, Azure, Bard, all the rest of this new gold rush are doing, is we're moving into a post-Turing test world. I think Alan Turing, who's a great man, or was a great man, is probably turning in his grave. He'd probably be terrified, and some of his intellectual inheritors, some of the other fathers and godfathers of AI are also very worried. But nonetheless, the future has been revitalized. It's been brought back to life. Now, of course, the tale of Dracula is one from, I think, Romania or Transylvania rather than Bulgaria. But it's relevant in the sense that the future is always being brought back to life. For skeptics, it has a Dracula-like quality. Back in the early 2000s, a lot of us believed in the future. We believed in something called Web 2.0. We believed that the future would be good, that technology would innovate, of course. We've already heard that word 300 times this morning. You'll hear it another 3,000 over the day or two that you're at this conference. Innovation now has a religious quality. And associated with innovation, at least technological, digital innovation in Silicon Valley, is the idea of social good. You, in Bulgaria, of course, have had various chapters, revolutionary chapters, where you've been promised better futures, particularly in the middle of the 20th century. Of course, those better futures weren't realized. I sometimes compare Silicon Valley with Joseph Stalin's engineers of the soul. They have a similarly utopian, messianic quality. They believe that everything they do is good, and usually everything they do is actually, or everything they did was bad. Perhaps there's a book comparing Joseph Stalin and Elon Musk. But back in the early 2000s with Web 2.0, there was huge promise. This technology, self-publishing technology, the technology that enabled Google and Facebook and Twitter. and the sharing economy, and Uber and Airbnb. All this was supposed to innovate, ennoble, create jobs, make us more prosperous, establish more meaningful arrangements between us, enrich the social. Of course, the first 20 years of the 21st century were the age of social media, of social. And for the first few years of the 21st century, this promise seems to have been realized. It was exciting. It was very exciting to live in San Francisco and Silicon Valley in the first part of the 21st century. But as the century has progressed, especially in the 20-teens, it's become increasingly clear that Web 2.0 has actually undermined unemployment. It's created a winner-take-all economy. Dominant platforms like Facebook and Twitter and Airbnb and Uber and Google. It's created what Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism, where we're being watched all the time, where we ourselves as individuals have been packaged into the product. So every time we go onto these so-called free platforms, whether they're Google or Facebook or Twitter, we're giving ourselves away. We're selling our soul. We're revealing who we are. And they're trading on our personal data. And that's why all the adverts that we bump into on these platforms seem so familiar. They're actually us. Most of all, this technology was supposed to liberate. It was supposed to strengthen our individuality. It was supposed to make us happy. But of course, what this technology has done, especially social media technology, is it's become addictive. It's making us miserable. It's no coincidence that we live in the age of anxiety. In America now, people are banning TikTok. They're talking of banning Facebook. They're talking of banning social media. The younger generation, the kids, your kids probably, although there may be some people here who grew up on this social media, have been made miserable by their addiction, by this influencer attention economy. We're struggling to concentrate. We're struggling to focus. In political terms, it's no coincidence that we've seen a great crisis of democracy over the last 20 years. The rise of Putin, of Xi Jinping, of Erdogan in Turkey, in Donald Trump in the United States, in the Brexit fiasco in the United Kingdom are all bound up in the disappearance, the crisis of truth. No one believes anyone anymore. No one's talking to one another anymore. All this is bound up not so much in the age of the social, but the age of isolation, of loneliness, of atomization. So the future, for the first 20 years of the 21st century, it didn't deliver, it fucked up. The future failed. My old friend Jaron Lanier, who's a neighbor in Berkeley in Northern California, just over the San Francisco Bay, I was just at his birthday party a couple of weeks ago. He summarized it brilliantly. He was the guy who invented virtual reality. He said, I miss the future. He wrote that in one of his recent books. I miss the future, and we all miss the future. We missed having faith in tomorrow. We want to believe in tomorrow, and yet because of Cambridge Analytica, because of Facebook, because of Trump, because of the addictive nature of social technology, because of surveillance capitalism, we've lost faith in the future. And that's why 5 years ago I wrote a book called How to Fix the Future, because the future can always be fixed. We specialize as humans in two things. The first is we always fuck the future up. And the second is we always get a second or third chance, and we usually fix it, although the future can never be fixed. It's not like a patient. Or perhaps it is like a patient in the sense that we ultimately as humans die, whatever Silicon Valley futurists tell you. So even if we fix the future, we create new problems. But I wrote this book back in 2018 called How to Fix the Future. And I suggested that there are 5 ways to address the crisis. I was early in addressing this crisis. And there are no miracle cures. There's no technology, there's no app to fix the future. You will find entrepreneurs here who will tell you, oh yeah, we've got this app, it's going to fix everything. Elon Musk describes that as the X company. That's what he wants to turn Twitter into. I don't suppose anyone, even he, really believes that. Technology can't fix the future. Technology can enrich the future. Technology isn't a bad thing. But it's us as humans. We're the ones who have to fix the future because we're the ones who need agency. The ultimate fear, the real dystopia in all this technology, is that we as humans are losing our agency, our ability to make our own histories. That has been always the promise of every revolutionary wave. Marx promised our ability as workers to make our own history in the industrial age. That didn't happen. And the fathers of Silicon Valley promised the same thing with digital. The problem is that we haven't been able to make our own history. Most of us feel dwarfed, disempowered by these huge structures of power, these multi-billion, trillion-dollar companies that control our lives, that shape what we think, that determine where we get our information, that define us as human beings. So the way to fix the future, as I argued in my book, is to seize back human agency. And I suggested that there is no quick fix, no single app, and that the strategies that I outlined in how to fix the future are a permanent, perpetual feature of human history. Whether it's the industrial age or the digital age or the age of AI. And those are rooted in 5 areas. Regulation, we need government. Americans don't like government. Perhaps Europeans like government too much. But regulation is important. In fact, one of the chapters in How to Fix the Future was built around a day I spent with Margaret Vestager, who is perhaps the most articulate and intelligent European regulator of American technology. But we also need more responsibility. We need entrepreneurial responsibility. Mark Zuckerberg, of course, famously and irresponsibly said, "Move fast and break things." That was a catchy phrase, and he did do that, and he broke society. He elected Trump. He empowered Putin. He created all this misery and corruption in the world. He undermined truth. So what we need are more responsible entrepreneurs. That doesn't mean they have to be social entrepreneurs. That doesn't mean that you can't combine responsibility with profit. The problem with the Silicon Valley model is usually people think of their careers as the first half of your life, you make money and rip off society, a la Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, and the second half of your life, you pay society back. Gates has done that very effectively. He's a very noble man. But we need to combine those two. We need to make more responsible entrepreneurs. We also need more organizations. We need citizens to step up. In my book, I talked about citizens taking responsibility, organizing labor unions, for example, with Uber and Airbnb, standing up to these companies, demanding more rigorous observation, not just through government, but through citizen groups. Above all else, we need more education. Now, I always feel in conferences like this that at the end of a long day, when everyone's laid out all the problems, people always conclude, we need more education. And of course, I don't know if there are any teachers here, but when you can't think of a fix, you dump it with teachers, and their lives are already hard enough. But education is important, it's critical, in managing these technologies, in getting kids, and indeed students, university students, ready for this world, whether it's their access to this technology, their use, their ability to control it, in the same addictive way as we teach children how to deal with alcohol or television or fast food. But we need education. So those 5 things, you don't have to be a genius to come up with them, but you do need to be a genius to implement them. And mostly they haven't been implemented with social media. So now we're on the brink of a new age. Now, in this year, 2023 will be seen as the beginning of our age of AI, of generative AI. The age of ChatGPT and all these other algorithms that represent, as I suggested earlier, a post-Turing test world. We really are in the future, and there's enormous excitement in Silicon Valley. Billions of dollars are being poured into every imaginable AI startup. It's important to bear in mind that nobody knows where any of this is going. Just as in 2000 and 2005, nobody knew what would happen when you poured all this money into social media. Back in 2005, indeed, no one even knew what the business model was of social media. It only became clear when Sheryl Sandberg moved over from Google and took the Google business model and imported it into Facebook. So the thing to bear in mind here is that history, Marx was wrong, history doesn't have its own logic. There is no master plan. Dialectical materialism is a children's story. The truth about history, which was most brilliantly articulated by the German sociologist Max Weber, is the law of unintended consequences. Stuff happens, and often it happens in ways that are unexpected and unintended, and that will be one of the key consequences of AI. So whoever you're talking to, whoever you're promising, whatever you're worrying about, the one thing I can guarantee you today is nobody here, and I would include myself, have any idea of the consequences of our AI age. It's just beginning. But the thing that I can be also confident about is that those consequences will be enormous, profoundly changing. Many of you will lose your jobs. There are hearings this week in Congress, and even Sam Altman, the new crown prince of Silicon Valley, the new Mark Andreessen, the new Steve Jobs, the new Mark Zuckerberg, all rolled into one. A brilliant young man, an idealistic young man, a man whose name will be forever associated with OpenAI. Of course, ironically, or perhaps not so ironically, OpenAI is anything but open, it's closed. He acknowledged that he doesn't know what's going to happen, and he acknowledged in these congressional hearings that he's deeply worried. The reality of this AI revolution is it's going to do more damage, more transformation than any other previous technology, including the internet. It's going to replace most of us. It probably means in 10 or 15 or 20 years that an AI will be able to give this speech. Perhaps it already can. But it's important to bear in mind then that as we head into this revolution, we've learned we're not going to get screwed again. We're not going to allow the same damage to be done by unintended consequences. So what I would argue, when we think about how to control the future, manage it, shape it, defend human agency, which is what we all want, our ability to shape our own lives, to determine what we want. We need to remind ourselves of those pillars of fixing the future. As AI begins to dramatically change the world, as it replaces many of the workers in our information economy, as it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish between smart machines and not so smart humans, as every tech product becomes driven by AI, we need to remind ourselves of the importance of regulation, the importance of entrepreneurial, moral responsibility, the importance of citizenship and our ability to stand up to these companies. Because there's one thing I guarantee you, this is going to be an even more winner-take-all economy than the previous one. Before, we were promised many thousands, hundreds of thousands of startup flowers will bloom. Of course, what we had was a winner-take-all economy. A tiny group of monopolists have emerged. The same will happen in this AI economy. Let me leave you on a particularly pessimistic note. because, of course, I'm a cheerful pessimist or a not so cheerful pessimist. But let me leave you on the note, which I can't work out, which may be the key to our future collectively and certainly in terms of tech, the issue of education. As I said, education is the kind of throwaway. Everyone relies on education. But what happens in a post-Turing world? What happens when we don't need education? What happens when the machines teach us? What happens when the machines are smarter than us? Then not only what becomes of education, not just schools, but universities, our whole traditional industrial way of educating ourselves and our children, but above all else, what happens when we want to fix the future? Can education be an ally, or will it be the thing that we need to get beyond? The future, I warn you, is very much alive. It's as dangerous today in May 2023 as it ever has been. And we all collectively, as humans who want our own agency, we all need to fix the future. Thank you.
Yeah, please. Thank you very much. We have two questions. They're both anonymous, but I'll start with the first.
Well, they're probably from a machine. Maybe from an AI somewhere.
Yeah, we can't be sure. So the first one is, didn't Brexit happen as a result of a referendum? Why would you give it as an example of a breach of democracy?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's probably a fair question, although at the time many people believed that the Brexit vote was manipulated. It was manipulated by Russian bots, it was manipulated by marketing companies, and as the Cambridge Analytica revelations have noted, there certainly was a degree of dodginess about the Brexit vote, but it's a fair question.
So we are going to the next one?
Okay, go on.
Okay. Would AI fix the future?
Sorry?
Would AI fix the future?
Well, that was how
This is a yes and no question.
I mean, that's basically how I ended. As I noted, there is no app to fix the future. You will see many promises, and in fact, I would predict that in spite of all the hysteria, the pessimistic hysteria over authoritarianism, perhaps the most dangerous political ideology of the 21st century will be a Singapore-style or a Chinese-style technocracy, a post-ideological way of doing politics that suggests that algorithms can fix everything. So I don't think I don't think AI can fix the future, because we're not computers, we're not adding machines. Jeremy Bentham, the founder of English Utilitarian, believed in the late 18th century that if you added up what we want and what we didn't want, if you added up our happiness and unhappiness, you could determine what we want. But you all know that we're more complicated than that. Often we don't know what we want. Often what we think we want, we don't really want. And often what we think we don't really want, we do want. So politics reflects that. Politics is complicated. The algorithm is based on ones and zeros. It can't recognize that complexity, which is ultimately why, hopefully, we will never have smart machines being able to address conferences like this or determine politics. So I don't think that we should want AI to determine the future, to determine our politics, to determine what our community wants. I fear if we do, we will have fallen into a technocratic dystopia where everything can be measured. When everything can be measured, we as humans lose out, and ultimately we will be living in a dystopia. Aldous Huxley already wrote a book about that. He called it Brave New World. It will be the ultimate Brave New World.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.